Hey guys, and welcome back to Hoosier Hardware. Today we're going to be taking a look at eBay, and just like any other online marketplace, you can pretty much find gaming PCs that are both good values and awful values. And today I'm going to be taking a look at a few that aren't so great values. In fact, there are three that I would highly recommend you avoid and just completely stay away from because they're not going to give you a good gaming experience in 2020. Especially a couple of these are just really bad. So let's go ahead and pop over here to the desktop and take a look at some of these really overpriced and just bad gaming PCs. Now, as we get started here, we're actually going to be taking a look at the cheapest first and just work towards the more expensive ones. Now, none of these are crazy expensive because, frankly, the components in them should be even cheaper than they are, but I kind of see why some of these sellers are doing what they're doing here. And we're going to start off with the Alarco Gaming PC desktop computer, Intel i5. 8 gigs of RAM, at least that's what I assume the 8G is, 1 terabyte of probably a hard drive space, Windows 10, Wi-Fi, and NVIDIA GTX 650 1 gigabyte GPU. Now, the thing I do like about this is it's somewhat upfront with the components that you're actually going to be getting in it. Now, it doesn't give you the exact i5 that you're getting, but it is a pretty good bet before I even scroll down that it's probably like an i5 2400 or something like 3470, something like that, one of those 2000 or 3000 generation i5s, because there's a gazillion of them available for very cheap at bulk prices. So my guess is this seller is just acquiring a bunch of those and putting these PCs together. Now, scrolling down here, we do have the actual specs list here. We have an Intel Core i5 2400, which actually is a decent CPU. Even in 2020, it will be able to game on some titles. Now, it's definitely not going to be the best gaming chip out there, but it will get you by in a lot of titles, especially these esports titles that are extremely popular, like Fortnite, PUBG. Those ones are even listed in this sort of listing to get people enticed to buy it because it is a somewhat cheap computer to be buying online. So the 2400 is okay if you can get it for the right price. We have an H61 motherboard. We have the GTX 650, which is not a good GPU here in 2020, and I'm guessing I've never actually played with this card. The lowest end GPU that I've ever actually spent significant amount of time with is the GTX 660, which was my first ever GPU. In fact, I have one right here. This is literally the first GPU I ever purchased, and it's okay. Even in 2020, it will play some games. These esports titles, it would probably play okay. But the listing here mentions it'll run Fortnite at 60 plus FPS. I would question what settings and what resolution, that sort of thing. Certainly not at 1080p high settings. It's just not going to happen in Fortnite with that GPU at high settings. But maybe if you drop the settings clear down and drop the resolution to 720p, it very well could get 60 FPS plus. PUBG, it says an average of 30 plus FPS. Again, we have no idea what settings. The Wi-Fi is a nice little add-on, or a nice inclusion rather, for this system because at least it gives you a little bit of flexibility with where your system sits. Obviously, a little bit of a typo here. The network port. The computer only supports the games that need hardware equal to or less than this computer's specifications. At least the seller does give you fairly in-depth specifications there. Calling this a gaming PC in 2020, it's starting to get to be a little bit of a stretch. This will let you do some older retro gaming as well as some of those esports games. Now, these last two are extremely egregious sort of offenders of the word gaming and using it just extremely willy-nilly. So this first one is listed as a 10-core gaming computer desktop PC tower, 3 terabyte hard drive, which, to be fair, 3 terabytes is a very respectable size for a hard drive. It's actually quite a large hard drive for a PC, though hard drives are pretty cheap, and 3 terabyte ones are no exception to that. 8 gigabytes, AMD R7 graphic Wi-Fi PC. Now, the case right off the bat is one of the cheapest ATX cases out there that you can find, and what I despise with this listing is we're not even getting a picture of the actual PC. We're getting a picture presumably of the case they're using, and you know it's not the PC just because, you know, there's no hardware inside that. That's a stock picture, probably just over from Newegg, pulled over for the eBay listing here. There's absolutely no hardware put into this, so we don't know what kind of cable management we're going to be getting whatsoever with this system. And this picture. Now, in case you didn't know, AMD actually did bring some of its 28 nanometer APUs from the older platforms like the Kaveri platform or whatever it was called to the AM4 platform, and there was really no architectural changes happening. These things still perform exactly like those cores that were very similar to the FX line of processors. The difference, of course, being these APUs that were pulled forward into the AM4 era did in fact feature some sort of graphics. Now, calling these gaming graphics is a big stretch. They're definitely better than the Intel graphics at the time, and you can in fact do some very light gaming with them. But calling this a gaming CPU or a gaming APU in 2020, you are just not going to be able to game with any kind of respectable frame rates on modern games. Even modern esports games are going to really struggle on this A8 processor to get to playable frame rates. Even at 30 FPS 720p, some esports games probably will struggle. Now, I will say this chip will absolutely play League of Legends, and I know this because I once built a PC for a friend that featured, it was either the A8 or maybe it was one of the A10 processors. And yeah, it plays League of Legends just fine. So if that's all you're looking for, then great, this PC will do it. But calling it a 10-core gaming PC or gaming chip at all is extremely misleading. So going down to the actual description here, brand new AMD quad-core APU. So yeah, it actually is a quad-core APU. Good job there. Accelerated processing unit, 4 CPU cores, 6 GPU cores. So at least they do have the courtesy to put exactly what they mean by 10 cores down here. Desktop gaming computer, fully assembled plug and play. Excellent. This computer is a great value that will compete with any comparable Intel Core i3, i5 computer available. If you don't put a GPU in something from that era, one of those maybe 2000, 3000, or even 4000 generation i3 or i5 computers, yeah, I have no doubt that it would outperform those computers in gaming. But you wouldn't build an Intel-based gaming PC without a GPU, like a discrete graphics card. And at a better price. That's absolutely false. You can grab any number of Optiplexes off of eBay for about $100 and slap in a GPU, even something really low end, even something overpriced and low end, like a GT 1030 that doesn't take extra power. And even if you got the DDR4 version that is just an awful value, it would outperform this thing by miles if you did that, and you would still be way under the $400 that this person is trying to charge. There's a free HDMI 1.4 cable included, free Wi-Fi and adapter. I assume it's probably just a USB adapter. And again, if you're paying $400 for this PC, I would question whether these are really free accessories. The motherboard is an AM4 motherboard, obviously, because the A8 9600 is Bristol Ridge, so it was on the actual AM4 platform. And the nice bit about that, one of the only redeeming things about this particular build is, yes, you can in fact then, if it's an A320 motherboard, you can upgrade to a Ryzen CPU without replacing RAM or the motherboard. And actually, that's probably an upgrade that I would totally make if you were somebody that unfortunately hit the purchase button on this particular thing. But that's really about all I have to say about this PC. If we scroll back to the top here, it's $400. They've sold 45 of these, and every one of them they're making probably a boatload of money on, because these A8 processors have got to be dirt cheap right now. This last PC uses the exact same playbook. This is once again really even the same exact CPU, but this one is going for $490. And the reason I'm featuring this, even though it's basically the same computer here, is aside from the price of $490, they've sold 10 of these. Now, the feedback on this is surprisingly good, and I can guarantee you if I purchased this PC and left feedback, it would not be any kind of good. But one person said great, one person says A+++, fast shipment, good seller, great to deal with, fast communication, great deal, super fast PC, which is outright not true, at least if you're gaming, fast shipping too, which that may well be true. And the one thing I do appreciate about this seller that the last one didn't do is we actually get a picture of the system itself. And cable management's actually really rough, especially for a case that looks like it gives you a little bit of space behind the motherboard tray. Probably not a lot going on there, but looks like at least a little bit of space going on. And I spy with my little eyes, I believe the reason someone might think this is actually a pretty snappy PC, it looks like there's an SSD right there. So the power supply, which is 450 watts, maybe, rated? Which is going to be more than plenty for this. And in fact, if that's what the rating is, you might even be able to fit in a graphics card there. It looks like we have 1 stick of RAM. So we're not even getting dual channel RAM with this thing. 32 gig. Okay, so let's go down here. We get the A8 9600 again. We get 32 gigabytes of DDR4, so this is probably, you might have different PCs available because I have a hard time believing he's going to use a single stick of 32 gigabytes. Probably a pair of 16 gigabyte sticks if that's the way it's spec'd out. He's using onboard graphics, which, why would you put 32 gigabytes of memory in this PC? I have a feeling it's a way of just, making the numbers look nice and big on the spec sheet. 240 gigabyte SSD, so at least in normal, maybe like web browsing, some very, very light things, it's actually going to feel fairly snappy, so that's going for it. And that's really about all there is to it. You do get Windows 10 Pro, which, if provided that it's activated, which I'm sure it is because you can get keys for a few dollars. It's a bad PC. It does use an A320 motherboard, which is absolutely not surprising. The, again, redeeming factor here is you can very easily just drop in a Ryzen CPU and even potentially, depending on the power supply, possibly drop in at least a competent GPU. But as far as gaming goes, calling this a 10-core, again, same exact thing. It's not a 10-core. It's a quad-core CPU with 6 graphics cores, but not the same thing. And calling it a gaming PC at all is extremely misleading. It's extremely overpriced. In fact, for just over $500, just today, I was looking, you can build a PC featuring that Ryzen 5 1600, the AF variant, and I'll link that down below just because it's such a great value. And you can actually put in a 1660 Super and get a 500 gigabyte SSD, an M.2 drive, no less. With modern hardware, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, and the whole thing came out to just beneath $600 after rebates and everything, and that would be a completely brand new system on actually modern hardware, whereas this thing is running off of CPU architecture that is ancient at this point. Well, maybe ancient's a little hyperbolic, but it's old CPU architecture and it's a bad gaming experience, whereas for $100 more, you would have an excellent gaming experience at 1080p and really even a lot of games at 1440p with a 1660 Super and a Ryzen 5 1600. So if you are somebody that is just getting into sort of looking for a gaming PC, I know it's a wild, wild west out there of different components, different compatibilities, trying to find a system that works well. And this is one of those things where there is just definitely a learning curve. Reddit is very helpful. There are several subreddits out there that you can ask advice for, and the Reddit community is actually really great about giving you advice on what hardware and what hardware to get, and also if the hardware you're looking at is a good price or just a terrible price. So check your Reddit communities. Linus Tech Tips has a great forum. Check different videos. There are tons of tech tubers covering the PC market on YouTube right now. It's kind of a golden age for resources, at least, to find computer parts out there at reasonable prices, but it does require some legwork on your end, especially if you're just now getting into the market for the first time. Do the research, otherwise you might get caught up, like apparently lots of people here on eBay have, and other marketplaces as well, with buying a computer that looks good, at least at first glance. If you don't know what you're looking at, you click the buy button. In this particular one, you have an SSD, so the first time you boot it up, you're like, wow, this thing is flying. It boots up in like 20 seconds, it's good to go, and then you load up a game, and I guarantee you the first time somebody loads up Fortnite on one of those A8 processors, they are going to be sourly disappointed, especially considering the price that they paid for it. So just do the research. I do want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Give us some links of actually good pre-builds, whether we're talking about ones on Amazon, ones on eBay, Newegg, other marketplaces. Leave some links down below for some decent ones that you can actually buy, especially for those of you that may be watching this looking to buy your first gaming PC. And of course, if you like the video, give it a like, share, subscribe, comment. All those things are very helpful for the channel. You can follow me both on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I'll see you guys in the next video.